Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I am your host, Jake Lewitt, and on this show, myself and my regular co-host, Mark Hoffmeyer, I've gotten through the entire Deep Blue Sea trilogy, one DVD chapter at a time, now looking at Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. Sometimes Mark is here, sometimes he is not. And Deep Blue Sea adjacent films those are films directed by Rennie Harlin, featuring sharks, or full of aquatic action, which is the case today with our Happy New Year episode, The Poseidon Adventure. What is the Poseidon Adventure? Well, it is a 1972 American disaster film directed by Ronald Neame, but produced by Owen Allen. More on him later. Starring the likes of Gene Hackman, Ernest Borgnine, Red Buttons, Carol Lynley, Kelly Winters, Roddy McDowall, Stella Stevens, Jack Albertson, a bunch of people. Leslie Nielsen's in there for a little bit. Loads of people. All-star cast. Or as my DVD copy says, Gene Hackman and an all-star cast, which I think is a slander upon Gene Hackman's name, but there we are. So I need someone to help me talk about this film, a disaster movie fan. Returning since last time he was on, I think was for Jaws: The Revenge. I'm sorry. Back from Forgotten Films is Todd Lieberno. Todd, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I always tend to get these holiday episodes here. We did Christmas with Jaws: The Revenge. Now we're doing New Year's with the Poseidon Adventure.
Yes, the accidental holiday episode of Jaws: The Revenge. 2 years ago now, I guess. Yeah. Yes, but we're free to. I'm always happy to talk to you at holiday time. You and I are both Christmas film fans, holiday film fans. I think we've talked about them many times in the past.
One in particular.
Yes, often involving Muppets, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. But no Muppets on board the Poseidon that we know of. If they are, they didn't make it. It's just sad to say. But is it safe to say you're a disaster movie fan? Do you like disaster movies?
I do. I got to admit, there's a few that I'm ashamed I haven't checked off the list yet. But yeah, I mean, they're ones that are a lot of fun to sit down with. I love kind of when I pull up a movie on Letterboxd or something like that, and it shows the classic poster, and the Poseidon Adventure is a great example of this, where it's got the little boxes down across the bottom of all the stars, because they want to make sure that all the big names that are in this movie. I can remember going to other films like that in my youth. I mean, speaking of Gene Hackman, like I remember Superman. That was one of those movies that had the pictures at the bottom of the poster with all the people that were in this movie. So that's just something nostalgic for me when they have those quote unquote all-star casts, and disaster movies tend to have all-star casts.
I'm right there with you. I feel like it's something we're missing these days. We get a couple. Roland Emmerich has kind of cornered the market a little bit. They've gotten somehow sillier. Things like Mark is a big fan of Moonfall from last year. Moonfall is kind of what we get in terms of disaster movies this year. I've seen Moonfall. It's not awful. It's not the worst film ever.
It's fun, but
it knows exactly what it is, which is very, very stupid. And Mark is down for that more than most people, I would say. When I think Mark loves when they're flying through the moon and there's a gravity wave, and it's nonsense. It's all nonsense, but it knows what it's doing, and it's kind of things you haven't seen before, which I can appreciate.
Well, and that is the case with a lot of disaster movies too, is that there's a level of silliness for sure, and a lot of times the ones that are like either the first in a series or the first that kind of tackle a certain subject matter are more serious, and you can take them more seriously. I think the Poseidon Adventure is kind of one of those, but like I think you and I both, we often think of the Airport franchise, because we had a wonderful bonding moment many years ago doing a podcast about all four Airport films, and the first one is a legit solid good film. I mean,
it was up for best picture.
Yeah, I mean, and as the series go on, they just get sillier and sillier, and it's a joy to behold.
Well, one of those entries is very Deep Blue Sea adjacent, Airport 77, which I'm planning to cover with one of the hosts of Airport Minute eventually later this year, hopefully, just trying to get our schedule sorted. So we'll be covering Airport 77 on Deep Blue Sea the podcast soon, hopefully. I'm going to dig into that one a lot then. But yeah, that was a wonderful show. Me, you, Nick, Robert,
Will,
and Will, of course, Will.
the champion. Yeah.
Yes, yes, all former guests of the show. We had Will on very recently for Die Hard 2. Um, yeah, that was a very, very fun, very, very one of the longest Lamcasts I was involved in. Sorry, not the longest, but yeah, it was an excellent show. I recommend everyone go and seek that out. And obviously the airport franchise, seek them all out. They're great. So I love disaster movies as well. I love any kind of film that takes a limited number of people, traps them somewhere, and kind of whittles them down. That's kind of my go-to genre. Whether they get whittled down by sharks or waves or just getting caught in things or just disappearing, whatever
So,
whittles them
so are
down.
you like, I know you're like a spreadsheet type of guy, or do you have like, you're like, all right, at the beginning of the film, we've got this person, this person, this person. Who am I putting money on that's not going to make it to the end of the film?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I had seen the Poseidon Adventure before. I hadn't seen the next film we're going to be discovering before, but I had a little check mark going. Like, okay, well, that person's just said something bad. They're going to die. Seen the first Poseidon Adventure, and you at the start you think, oh, any of these people could survive, and then when one character, when Mrs. Rogo is like, I'm going first, I don't get stuck behind fat ass. You think, oh, you just signed your death warrant. Bye. See you later. Because you're a kind of empathetic character up until that point, and then you just suddenly made this fool. Do you know you're in a film? Yeah, so I like when characters disappear with no warning. That's kind of my favorite thing. When they're not holding people up, they haven't done anything wrong, but they just get taken out. That's great. I love that.
Mhm.
I like it in Blindsided. Doesn't happen with the classic ones as much.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but Poseidon Adventure is one of the earliest disaster films. Not the like Airport came out before this, but this is one of the high points of the genre. But have you ever been on a cruise? You've been on a cruise ship? Something that
I
appeals
have
to you?
not. No, no. I mean, I've been on boats just like, tooling around Lake Michigan or something like that. I grew up in the Chicago area. You go up to Lake Geneva there and, take the little boat tour or something like that. That's about the extent of my boat experience. And like I've always, I've said to my wife before, I mean, is that something you'd be interested in someday? Disney cruise, I don't know what. But she's always like, no, I'd be too afraid I'd get seasick and be miserable the whole trip, that. So I don't know that a cruise is ever going to be in my future.
Yeah, I have done a 3-day cruise. When my parents retired, they kind of treated us all to a holiday, to a vacation. So it was a family thing when we went to Bruges, from the film In Bruges. Apparently
Mm.
existed before the film, but I don't care.
Go figure.
And one of the other little islands off the coast of the UK somewhere. And it was the tagline to the Poseidon Adventure is "Hell upside down," implying that hell is a cruise ship. Uh, and not far off, I would say. If you're the kind of person like myself and my wife who we very much enjoy going outside and the countryside and wide open spaces, cruise ships, not that. They,
Mhm.
yeah, always bobbing and flowing. It didn't help that I had an infected bite on my leg, so I couldn't walk very much. And it was just not a fun experience where I would have been, or putting me on a cruise ship. So
See,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, the ocean in general is just, I don't know. I've always grown up pretty landlocked. Like I said, I grew up in Chicago, which is right on Lake Michigan, but it's just, it's not quite like, there's no sharks in Lake Michigan, nothing like that, and now I live in Colorado, which is just completely landlocked. We're 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean. So, I, yeah, cruise ships are not something that I'm, are really on my radar, being in the mountains of Colorado.
well, I would say if if the idea of being on a cruise ship doesn't appeal to you, you're probably right. Yeah, it's a specific kind of thing. My parents love them. More power to them. They're about to go on a quite a long cruise to South America. Great. Have
Wow.
fun. I'm not doing that anytime soon. Anyway, let's get on with the film, shall we? So, I'd seen this film a bunch. Apologies, listeners, if I sound terrible. I'm a bit sick at the moment. I apologize. I'll edit
Which
out.
is what happens on cruise ships a
It is
lot,
indeed, yes.
Aren't they like, they're like petri dishes for people to catch all kinds of terrible diseases.
Yeah, I think that is the case. Plus, you throw seasickness into the mix.
Hmm.
Which, yeah, never a fun time. So I've definitely seen the Poseidon Adventure a bunch of times. Like as a kid, I think it's the first kind of disaster movie I liked. I've said before, I'm a big fan of Daylight with Sylvester Stallone, where he gets tricked. Have you seen Daylight?
I have
Yeah,
once, many, many moons ago.
Poseidon Adventure in a tunnel is Daylight. It follows a lot of the same beats, but there's a dog and some prisoners involved, and Viggo Mortensen is an escape artist who fails to escape.
A dog is totally one of the things missing from the Poseidon Adventure. I will say that. There's
Yes.
no animals in peril, which, come on.
Yeah, there's not at all. There's just people. Which we haven't yet decided if we're going to talk about the remake. If I do, it will be with Mark because it has Kurt Russell in it, and
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
cannot talk about a Kurt Russell film without Mark. That's just the law of this podcast.
Hmm.
I think that's the closest he's come to being in a Deep Blue Sea adjacent film, other than maybe Overboard. I can't think of
Yeah, I guess so.
I can't think of a Kurt Russell shark movie, and he's yet to work with Rennie Harlin. Uh, so there we. So yes,
Hmm.
we might
Yeah.
round out the month with Poseidon. We'll see how it goes. But I'm guessing there's a dog in there at some point. That feels like it would be a modern addition to the plot. So yeah, this is one that I saw a lot as a kid. Loved it. I hadn't seen it for a little while. Watched it because it was New Year. Watched it on New Year's Day, and still really like this film. It's uh, it does. Shelley Winters was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. I may disagree with that nomination. We'll get there later on as we go through. I think. Um, I'll talk about it a little bit now. The Dark Knight Rises, Marion Cotillard gets a lot of guff for the shot where she dies in The Dark Knight Rises being a terrible moment of acting.
Hmm.
Shelley Winters does not survive this film, and her death scene is terrible.
It's like it's literally like flipping a switch type of thing, where it's just suddenly, oh,
Yeah,
turn the off switch, and we're dead. Yeah.
she has a full conversation, dies.
Yeah.
And
I get I do I get why though she got a nomination, because I think there is something that's just irresistibly charming about what Shelley Winters is doing in this film. It's a little weird as I was reading a few things getting ready for the podcast. First of all, watching the film, yeah, and I've seen it before too, but I'm watching it and just remembering how much in this movie Shelley Winters reminds me of my own grandmother. Just kind of the look, the attitude, the way she talks, and all that just reminds me a lot of my grandmother, who's been gone for well over 30 years. So it's kind of like a little flashback there. But then it's strange as I'm looking at like the trivia and stuff, and like Shelley Winters is the same age I am now when she made this film. So I'm like, oh no. I'm thinking how much she reminds me of my grandmother, and I'm that age right now.
I mean, people age differently in films these days.
Yes.
So she was in her early 50s in Poseidon Adventure, but she's playing it these days. Her character would be 75, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the guy from The Thing. It's the Wilford. It's
Oh,
the Wilford
Wilford
Brimley rule.
Brimley.
Yeah.
Well, heck, Wilford Brimley looked like that when he was 16. Come on.
There's a Twitter account out there with something like the Wilford Brimley line that tweets when people get over when celebrities age over how old Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the account that exists. And it's nonsense these days.
I think I'm past that too. Yeah.
I mean, if you tell me he was 38 in the Cocoon or he was 83, I think I'd believe either way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, her husband is Jack Albertson, right?
Yes.
And which, of
Grandpa
course,
Joe.
is another one of those actors who's going to be, eternally ancient because he was, Charlie's grandfather in Willy Wonka. Yes.
Yeah, how old was he in Willy Wonka? That's got to be.
That's 71.
That's 71, and Jack Albertson was born in 1907. So yeah, so he was 64. Yeah, that's. I mean, he's still like these days. I don't know how old people were in the Tim Burton remake because I may never see that film, but I'm guessing he'd be like 80 in that one.
Hmm.
Anyway, tangent. So yeah, the Poseidon Adventure. I'd forgotten how much happens before the ship gets turned upside down. Because it's like a 20 minutes of film before the ship flips. Uh,
There's a lot that goes on because you got to establish all the different characters and their dynamic.
yes,
I mean, that's a trope of
absolutely.
disaster films, for sure. At the same time, it doesn't feel like it goes on too long with that. One of the things that, again, as I rewatched it, I was like, wow, that's like the quickest 2 hours ever. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? The movie just flies by.
it does, absolutely does. I agree. Yeah. It is a fun old time because once the ship flips and there's like another 20-minute sequence of them in the ballroom trying to like convince more people to come. And Red Button's the least charismatic person in the world is going to convince no one to come with him. That was a bad decision. Like you, nervous guy with no friends, go get more people.
Yeah, more like creepy guy with no friends. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
we'll get
thing.
there.
He's kind of sitting there and you're going, yeah, I get why you're a little bit of a
Oh,
loner. You're
confirmed
kind of
bachelor.
creepy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, his character plays differently these days. Uh, yeah, and there's a like 20-minute sequence down there. After that, they're just constantly moving. There's a few kind of dramatic sequences here and there when characters don't continue on, but everything
Mhm.
is just moving, go, 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 which kind of makes sense because they got to go because the water's coming after them. The boat's going down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can't stop the water.
you
That's the
can't.
thing.
You cannot stop the sea. So let's kind of go through our characters here. So the main guy, our lead, is Gene Hackman. That's the kind of renegade Reverend Frank Scott, who uh, preaches. He's a man of the cloth. He's a preacher, but he preaches that people should just ignore God, do their own thing, and believe in themselves. Uh, I love Gene Hackman in this film. Most disaster movies, I feel like one of their failings is not having a strong character at the helm.
Mm.
And uh, Scott here, Gene Hackman, he's not only is Gene Hackman one of the best actors just ever.
Period.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
just
One of my all-time favorites. Yeah.
it should be everyone's. Should be on everyone's list. He also has a character who has like a lot of like inner demons and trauma and just a lot going for him. He gives these speeches. He's he's got a lot of character to him. Whereas if you think about another one I quite enjoy, The Towering Inferno, tell me any characteristic of Paul Newman other than he's an architect, or of Steve McQueen other than he's a firefighter. Those are their
Well,
characteristics of their jobs. Whereas you have he's a
and you
preacher. He's got a past. Things have gone wrong in his life.
and I guess I had gone just long enough without having watched this film that as it started, I went, "Oh yeah, he's a preacher." You know, it's like, oh, and I don't know. I mean, Hackman is just so great at being this, playing characters who are just, um, I don't know how to describe it. You know, they take charge and you're gonna follow me type of thing, and that's this role, absolutely. I mean, and I suppose if I really wanted to spend a whole lot of time on it, you could really just break this down from a religious angle, what happened with his character when it comes to whatever church he was in, or disputes that he's had with other clergy or whatever. I mean, you almost get the impression as you're watching that he's not really caring that much about saving the people. He just wants to be right. You know what I mean? And but I mean, there's also, I mean, you could draw parallels. I mean, like as I'm watching the scene where the ballroom's flipped over and they're all supposed to climb up the Christmas tree. It's like, come on, this is your only chance, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going, it's like, he's Noah, and it's all the people that were laughing at Noah for building the ark, and he's like, he grabs a few people that are going to join him on his silly idea here, and everybody else gets washed away.
Yeah, it does kind of feel very much a luck of the drawers who was sat at his table.
Hmm.
because like the Rogos come along just because they were there and chatting to him. Like Ernest Borgnine does not want to go. Like it's only because
Yeah.
his wife's going. Um,
And I mean, Ernest Borgnine is
oh,
just, I mean, you've got a couple people in this movie who are, the type of folks that anything they're in, I'm interested. Gene Hackman is one of them, and Ernest Borgnine is one of them
same,
because
yeah.
he just always brings something special, and it's just a lot of fun. And of course, I had a little chuckle watching this, going, "Oh yeah, Ernest Borgnine's in this," and to my son, like I've tried to train my son in the ways of movies. He's not quite up to speed on all the things I am, but he knows who Ernest Borgnine is because he's the voice of Mermaid Man on
Yeah.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
I do like
Another C connection there.
I mean the SpongeBob movies are on a long list of films. I've never seen anything SpongeBob, so it would take some uh deducing what the heck is going on. And that's yeah, they're on a long list. Yeah, I do like that Ernest Borgnine, a whole new generation of fans through SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just like you, he's a guy that I will watch in anything. He's been in some terrible films, but he's always great in them. He's never bad. I mean, Marty is his Oscar. He's fantastic in Marty, playing a completely different character than he does normally in anything else. But he's always dependable. He's always like a kind of a working class guy. He's like a normal guy, but he has an intensity to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a police lieutenant who married his favorite hooker in this one, basically.
Which is a great gimmick for this thing. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Borgnine, he does bring this intensity. He brings something unique every time. The one for me this year, I saw Bad Day at Black Rock for the first time this
Oh,
past year.
that's
Uh,
still on my list. I haven't got there yet.
oh, and Borgnine's fantastic in that movie. So yeah,
Nice, nice. But I mean, I love him in Dirty Dozen. He somehow doesn't get lost amidst the cast of the Dirty Dozen. He still manages to stand out. He's great in anything. I love Ernest Borgnine. Like Escape from New York. I love him as Cabby.
yeah.
He's not in it a lot, but he's great when he is. Ah, yeah. So
Well,
just
and I mean, you mentioned his part here. He's a policeman. He's married his favorite hooker, and that's just a great dynamic. I love the dynamic between him and Stella Stevens, and kind of the bickering that they have in their cabin before the whole disaster happens and all that stuff. Stella Stevens, not someone I would put up there as a stellar actress and everything and all that, but I like the dynamic that she has with Ernest Borgnine in this.
yeah, they're a believable couple. Yeah, they
Yeah,
have the moment before they go to the party where she's concerned that people might recognize her. That's a nice scene between the two of them. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they offer a lot of the comic relief, I would say,
Mm.
which you do always need in these kind of films. This is a very tense situation trying to get out, so having some comic relief is a lot of fun. I love any time Ernest Borgnine has to deal with the kid. Yeah. I'm a proponent of saying I don't like children in films. Robin Shelby, one of the most annoying children in any film ever, I would say. No offense to Eric Shea as an actor, but Robin is irritating, and I don't like him. So anytime that he has an idea and it turns out to be right, I'm like, God damn it! Why do we got to listen to this kid? But Ernest Borgnine, his response just like, yeah, yeah, shut up, kid, go away. Anything the kid says, it's like, yep, that'd be me. I get on with this guy. And when the kids say like, we need to go to the back of the ship, it's where the steel is thinnest. It's only an inch thick. And Rogan's like, do you know how thick an inch of steel is? I hate when Gene Hackman comes in and goes, it's 1 inch thinner than 2 inches. Okay. Yes, okay, it's still an inch of steel. If there was no one on the other side of that, you'd be stuffed. Fine. So yes, we've got the Rogos, we've got Reverend Scott. Red Buttons is here as Mr. Martin, a lonely guy. He's a haberdashery shop owner. He's never found time for love. pops a whole load of pills at every dinner party and runs very oddly along the deck every day at the same time with his elbows pinched in. It's this terrible
And
running form. He
and
wonders why he's alone.
running a haberdashery is apparently the like, most demanding job on the face of the earth, because he has absolutely no time for a social life and all that. I mean, there's that line at the dinner party where he says something about, well, that's the life of being a haberdasher or something like that.
He says,
like,
because the Rosens are going to see their grandson, and his advice is, tell them one thing: don't become a haberdasher.
I'm like, okay, I'll pass that one on to my children. Yes, okay. I had no idea it was such a demanding lifestyle.
Yeah,
Bill Gates has got nothing on your local haberdasher.
he says he has like a 14-hour day every day, and it's just him. So well, get help. Like close on Sundays. I don't know. Yeah. So he's as a character, he's fine, I guess. Like the kind of the meek guy who is like a mediator between when Rogo and Scott have their various arguments. And he's friends with the Rosens, with Shelley Winters and Jack Hamilton, so that's how they get involved. But he does come off as quite creepy, because the singer Nonny, her brother, who I always thought was her boyfriend before he dies.
Yeah.
But her brother, Nonny is the singer in the band. Her brother is the guitarist. He dies when the ship flips over. A bunch of people die when the ship flips over. Most of them are extras. And he dies, so Mr. Martin manages to convince her to come along. He's on the lookout for a lady friend. And there's like a 30-year age difference between them, and it's very creepy. And
yeah, it's like you watch that and you go, okay, which part was originally written to be an older character than what they cast, or a younger, vice versa. Was Red Button's character supposed to be a younger guy, or was Carol Lindley's character supposed to be an older woman? Because it's strange. It doesn't match up. And just the whole time you're going, I don't know. You're just going, man. You've just found that opportunity finally. You haven't had time for the ladies, but now that it's a life or death situation, you're making your moves. It's weird.
Yeah, if he was any less meek as a character, it would seem predatory. But as it is, as it's Red Buttons, it just kind of feels like she's his surrogate daughter. And he's just trying to save. Like, he's skipped the whole having a partner and gone straight to being a parent. That's the only way that it makes sense in my head. It's like there cannot be a romantic connection here. It's just wrong. It doesn't, like, he's preying on her after her brother just died. That's bad news. Don't do that. Yeah.
And Carol Lindley's character, I mean, I like her a lot. There's a lot of movies I've seen her in, and she, usually brings something, that's just a great screen presence to a movie. Here she's, it's nice to see her, but she's basically there to cry and scream.
Yes. And down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's a case where I like the actress, but what they give her to do is, she's better than that. So
I'm just looking through her CV. This is all I've seen her in. I had assumed she was a singer.
I like she's in Under the Yum Yum Tree with Jack Lemmon, which again, Jack Lemmon, one of those people, I'll watch him in anything. That's a fun flick.
Okay, I'll add it to the list. Oh, Dean Jones. Okay. That's okay. So we've mentioned the Rosens already. So there's an older couple going to see their grandson for the first time. He's 2. Going to see him for the first time in Israel. I liked them. Just kind of an older couple. She's a bit of a busybody. She doesn't like when people aren't married. Which, okay. I mean, I know these people. These people exist.
Yeah.
So they're nice. And then we have the children. So Susan, Sue Martin, and her younger brother Robin, Shay, are traveling alone without their parents. They're going to meet their parents wherever they're going to.
Pamela Sue Martin, Nancy Drew. That's where my generation knows her from. She was Nancy Drew on the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries series that aired in the the late 70s, I think it was on. So
Did she spend those series walking around in just her underwear the whole time?
no.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's another thing. Like they probably wouldn't. Like this is a young character. I mean, the actress is 19 when the film was released, but young character who spends the entire film just walking around in. Uh,
Well, and they do that. They do that to Stella Stevens too. I mean, I guess
yeah, with a shirt
Shelley
on it, yeah.
Winters, she had the opportunity, but no.
She declined. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so Pamela doesn't get Susan doesn't get a lot to do really. She just she seems to have a bit of a crush on Reverend Scott, on Gene Hackman,
Yes.
which I can understand. It's Gene Hackman. He's charismatic. But so her main thing is she just kind of follows him around, and then Robin Shelby just gets to be annoying the whole time. Do you find him annoying, or is that just me? Am I just
Oh
being
no,
a dick?
he's annoying. He's annoying. He's a know-it-all kid type, and he's another one that he showed up on all kinds of TV series in the 60s and 70s. He's a kid that I see him and I go, oh, I know him. He's been on lots of things, and just looking over things real quickly, I can see that he was on an episode of the Brady Bunch. He was on Batman. So he showed up on all those shows that I used to watch reruns of as a kid. So yeah, definitely a familiar face, and often as kind of a bratty kid.
What kind of character did he play on Batman?
Well, I was just looking it up here. He's in the episodes. He's in Comeback Shame, which is, I think, Shame was played by Cliff Robertson, I think. So it's kind of a cowboy episode type of thing. But it just shows his character name is Andy. So I'm like, all right, I don't remember what that means. I mean, I did a extensive series going episode by episode through the original 66 Batman series, but I do not remember specifically how his character factors into things.
So that was a great series reading about all these shows I've never seen. I've seen the Batman the movie, but I haven't seen any of the TV show. I feel like I have now, just from reading your column. So that was good. Okay, so he's here, and then the only other person that goes with them is, I'm gonna guess, not long enough for you, Roddy McDowell, because I always forget he's in this.
Oh yeah, this is the one of all the characters that don't make it to the end. I mean, he's one of the first to go, right?
He is the first of the 10 who goes with them. He is the first because he's got an injured leg and he falls off a ladder, and Borgnine goes down to save him but can't find him. That happens a lot in these kind of films. Is someone falls in the water and disappears. It's like a tunnel. It's like not that wide of a shaft. He couldn't have gone many places.
Oh, it's a bottomless pit. No, that's the way it works. But yeah, I mean, it's Roddy McDowell. It's like, no, you don't get rid of Roddy McDowell halfway through the movie. Come on.
And he's just like a genial, just kind of Scottish waiter who he knows the shit. He's like, oh, come along with me. Let's go this way. I'm stuck up here. Oh no, you come up to me. He's just kind of helpful.
Calls everybody sir. Yeah.
Just a nice guy dies. So that is a shame. And I generally didn't know it was Roddy McDowell until the credits.
And he's the reason they're having so much success early on, because he knows the ship and all that, So he's the one that's getting them where they need to be. So
if he'd stuck around, we'd listen to the kid less. Oh.
Get rid of the kid, keep Roddy McDowell.
Absolutely. Throw that kid off the ladder. Anyway. Yeah, you go down and try and find him too. Oh, you disappeared as well. Oh, well.
Now, Jay, I don't want to steal your thunder here. I'm not trying to disrupt, your structure for the show, but, you were talking about the cast, and you said last, and
of the people that went with them.
Of the people, you've got Roddy McDowell. But yeah, no, we've got to go.
We got to talk about Leslie Nielsen, because Leslie Nielsen is the captain of the ship. This was back when Leslie Nielsen was a legitimate dramatic actor before he became Frank Drebin. And I don't know. Did you ever watch him when he was on SNL? When he hosted SNL?
Oh, I think I've probably seen that, but it's been a long time.
I watched his monologue fairly recently, where he basically says that he's known for being a comedic actor, but he doesn't understand why, because he just delivers everything like he's a dramatic actor, and people seem to find it funny. And
Mm.
I hadn't, I mean, it seems so obvious now, but just watching anything he just does it dramatically, and it's funny. He just has that way about him. So even
Yeah.
in the Poseidon Adventure, when he's up on the bridge. So it's the bridge, not just on a starship. It's a bridge on a normal ship, right? I think, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not in Star Trek, but it's still the bridge. He's like talking to the engine room, and he's talking to their version of Mr. Ismay from Titanic. He's like, "I want the headlines. Let's go, let's go, let's go now. Go faster. I'll sack you." Uh, and his just delivery of like, "Oh, say up when the engine room is quite rude to their version of Mr. Ismay, whose name I do not know." He's like, "Say it louder." He's next to me. He's hilarious. He's like, there's comedy to everything he says, just because he's Leslie Nielsen and he has a funny
Yeah.
face. I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of his earlier performances now, his more dramatic performances, take on a different tone because we associate Leslie Nielsen as being a comedic actor now. The truth of the matter is, it's performances like this that he's given here in the Poseidon Adventure, which is part of why his performance in Airplane was so successful, because he does play it absolutely straight. And yet, just the tone of that movie gives a whole different spin on it. And it's completely brilliant. And, and Nielsen is fantastic in the short amount of time that we get him here, just as this stern captain and this is my ship and that kind of stuff. It's wonderful. And again, talking about being sad that Roddy McDowall exits early, there's a part of me that, though there's not a lot about this movie I would change. I almost desperately wanted them to find a near death Leslie Nielsen bobbing in the water to deliver a few last lines before he makes his official exit, in this movie.
Yeah, or like somehow he gets sealed into the bridge and he's still sending out a signal, a distress signal somehow.
Right.
Like they keep cutting back to and back down here. What's going on back with the captain? Oh, he's still
Mm-hmm.
dying. Yeah, that's a shame. But
Well,
yeah,
and the guy that's there with him, the company guy that's giving the orders. I mean, that is, I think, one of the disappointing aspects of the film is you don't really get a satisfying end for that villain. You want to see them get what's coming to them. And I mean, granted, almost everyone on the ship dies, but still,
well, I don't know. If they kept making sequels, they could have found half the bloody passengers.
yeah.
Judging by the sequel to this one. But it's more on that later. But I mean, we do get as once the captain and the his mate and the guy once they aren't there, we do get a new villain in the ship of the purser. Who's like the purser, really the guy in charge of the ship. He'll tell everyone who wants to know.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who doesn't want anyone to leave. Very angry, furious man in the party. And yes, I was sad we didn't get a close up of when the water rushes in and all the extras die. Just like him getting trampled to death or something.
Well, and that's, I mean, it's a great scene as it is. I gotta admit, I mean, Hackman's shouting at them, and they should come, and they say no, we're following the purser, and then immediately the water starts to rush in, and they all run for the Christmas tree, and they're all trying to make their way up, and Hackman's desperately reaching for them, and all that. It's glorious.
It is and then when Hackman goes back to the crew, to his survivors, just their expressions of like, what the hell is happening there? What did you see, man? Especially
Yes.
Borgnine. Borgnine has such a great face for this kind of thing. Just kind of bug-eyed. What did we miss? Actually, don't tell us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want
Yeah.
to know. Yeah, so they climb up a big Christmas tree, very handy Christmas tree that hides the room to get out. That's a nice scene, and then they're off. And then from there, it's quite simple. Just keep going up. So they go through tunnels. It's when ladder. That's when Akers falls off. Rogo does go down to save him, but is unable to. And then when they tell Scott, like, oh, Akers didn't make it, he just yells at him. Massive argument. Because they've also found the doctor and a bunch of other passengers and the nurse at this point heading the wrong way, and they won't listen.
Mhm.
So they are never found. Um, maybe we'll talk about those in a couple of weeks' time. When that party. So yeah, tensions have fought between Scott and Rogo, and I I just I I just like this whole sequence. I just like the progression. Like, okay, it's going up. We're gonna drag people up with the fire hose up the stairs. Just the setting of it's a luxury cruise liner. Everyone's in their finest uniform, their finest like
Mhm.
fancy dresses, but they turn it upside down and it's on fire and the water's coming in. It's just a nice, it's a nice setting of it's an upside down boat.
I,
Uh,
I I find myself, like looking at the ceiling a lot, which is technically the floor, to try and get my bearings as to, how everything relates to what we're seeing. And I mean, I've never been on a cruise ship. I don't know how all these things work, but I'm always a little bit, like, okay, what is tied down and what's not tied down? Like, because in the ballroom the tables are tied down
the
because
pianos are not.
yeah, because Pamela Sue Martin is sitting up there dangling from
What
one
are
of the
you doing up
tables.
there, sis?
Yeah,
It's a stupid question.
but like the chairs, I'm like, aren't there? I thought I saw a few chairs on the ceiling at some point, and I'm going, would the chairs be tied down? How does that
I think
work? I
some
don't.
of them are. I was trying to remember the 2 days I spent on a cruise ship. The tables definitely are. The chairs, I don't think they are because you need to like move them to like get
Right.
out of the table. But some of them might be for like benches. They might be. But yeah, the pianos definitely not tied down. Definitely should have been tied down. I don't know. It's. I don't know why it's so satisfying just to watch a room tilt and people fly down this giant slide and get crushed by a piano. I don't know what it is I find so satisfying about that.
Well, and it's fun to watch those scenes and try to pick out, okay, well, that's a scene that's on a gimbal of some sort because I can see something moving. But that scene, they're just doing the Star Trek thing. They're just going,
Yeah.
whoa,
So
to the
they,
left.
they're just tilting the camera. Everyone's fine. They've
Right.
practiced this a bunch of times. But yeah, in the big ballroom, they put some kind of a tilt to it, I'm guessing. But when it's just 8 people walking down a corridor, just shake the camera a little bit. It's fine. Everyone go left and
Yeah.
right. It's all well done. It's
Oh,
this
yeah.
very popular. This film, like it cost, according to Wikipedia, it cost less than $5 million to make back in '72. It made $125 million.
Oh, dang.
That's ridiculous.
And I mean, won a lot of awards, got a lot of recognition there. I mean, the visual effects, I think, was one of them. I think it won a visual effects Oscar, if I remember correctly. And
It won visual effects and best song.
the
So,
song, we got to talk about the song. Yeah.
but it was also nominated for best sound score, John Williams. Editing, costume design, cinematography, art direction, and supporting actress for Shelley Winters. So yeah, it was an awards darling. It was fun. What do you want to talk about the song? Let's get the song out of the way, please.
Well, I just always think it's funny when these disaster movies have a song in them, because I mean, and I say this as someone who I love movie songs. I grew up in the 80s. So, every movie tried to have a hit soundtrack in the 80s. I've got a monster playlist on Amazon Prime that is just all soundtrack songs from the 80s. And it just goes on and on because there were tons of them. But it's always kind of funny the way that they try to. I mean, it's almost like you could tell they're going, what's one more nomination maybe we can get? Well, if we throw in a song, maybe we can get one. And this song, the morning after, I mean, first of all, whenever I hear this one, especially in the context of the movie, I think it makes me think of the TV movie The Day After, which of course was that nuclear war one that came out in the 80s, which I would not watch. I still have not watched it to this day because I was scared to death when that thing came out. But so I hear that title, The Morning After, and I think The Day After. But I think that does, it's an appropriate kind of hook, I guess, for a disaster movie. It's almost ominous, you know. Guess what? Something really bad is coming, but there's gonna be another day. Maybe not for you, but maybe for me.
Yeah, it does. I mean, they had a little bit of backstory saying that the band was like picked up in Gibraltar, and they were offered a free ride if they do the music for free. Also, and it's like that's more back. It's a ship with a New Year's Eve party. They're gonna have a band. Like you don't need to
Yeah.
have. They just say, "Oh yeah, that's the band."
Oh, we left. We were planning this big party, but we forgot the band.
Yeah,
Maybe we can pick someone up in Gibraltar.
they stole a lifeboat. They headed out to sea. They're gone. The band. So because they should have something for Roddy McDowell and his colleague to talk about when he's like fawning over Nonny. That one scene. It's an odd. It's more than we needed. I don't know. We could have just assumed, oh, you're the singer, you're the waiter. Okay, let's go. We can tell that by what you're doing. You're singing and you're attending to people. But
Right.
But there we are.
It's not Carol Lindley singing the song either. She's
no,
dubbed.
It's
Yep.
not. Yeah. I just found alternate casting. Apparently, Gene Wilder was originally cast as James Martin, as Mr. Martin. I would have loved that. A great deal. No offense to Red Buttons, but he's no Gene Wilder.
That would have been fun. Yeah.
About Lancaster was going to be the Gene Hackman character, but you turn it down. I'm okay with that.
That would have been a different kind of intensity. I would have been all right with that. But I mean, I'll put Gene Hackman in anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every movie should have Gene Hackman in it.
And Sally Kellerman was going to be Linda Roger. Yeah, that still would have been fine, I guess. Okay, so they make their way through. Akers dies, make it, and then they get to a water section where they need to swim through. It turns out that Shelley Winter's character, Belle Rosen, she used to be a very good swimmer for Girl Guides group. So when Gene Hackman swims through, he gets stuck. She goes in after him, frees him from the wreckage. They get through, and then she just dies of, I'm assuming, a heart attack. They have a big dramatic sequence of like, oh, give this to Manny, tell him to give it to our son, grandson, yada yada yada. What I find most heartbreaking about that scene is there's a rope, and the other people are at the other end of the rope waiting for a tug so they can start coming through. And because everything's going on, Gene Hackman and Shelley Winters, they don't give that tug, and her husband's just the other side of it, like waiting. And thinking that tug, he could have got there. He could have said goodbye, but they don't. They don't have that moment. I don't think that's dwelt on enough in this film. But they don't. He's just got Ernest Borgnine's like waiting for the tug. Like, well,
they got to keep moving quickly, you know, and they do move past the the deaths pretty quickly. You're right. They probably should have focused on that one a little bit more, but I guess it was enough to get an Oscar nomination. So that's the way it works. But you also get it's a great moment with Ernest Borgnine when he goes through and he finds Gene Hackman and he finds Shelley Winters dead, and then he's got to go back and Hackman tells him not to tell.
What do I tell him? Tell him nothing.
Yeah, and of course Jack Albertson asks the question when he gets back, and as soon as he asks it, you see the look at Ernest Borgnine's face, and you go, "This guy cannot lie.
She made it through.
He can't lie. He's not."
You're a terrible cop, mate. Oh dear. Yeah. And so immediately Jack Albertson just dives in the water and heads off. Yeah. And
I love to. I mean, another thing that you get in these disaster movies is where certain characters have things in their history that's going to somehow contribute to whatever they have to accomplish.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's that Shelley Winters just happens to have been a swimming champion at some point. And like, I don't know about you, but I watch these movies, and whenever that type of scene comes up, I go, I don't have anything in my past that's going to be useful to that. I mean, like, if I was in a disaster movie, what's going to come up? It's like, oh, well, I've been on your show other times before. We've talked about, I've been a puppeteer in my life. And I know how to make dolls wiggle. I can do that. And,
is anyone good at movie trivia? We need that now.
I have absolutely nothing that I can contribute to being a person in a disaster movie. I would not. Everybody would die if it was me.
I feel like I'd end up being in the Rogo's role of like somebody else is in charge, and I'm just kind of doing the physical work behind it. Because I I run, I'm like quite an active person, still quite a big guy, but that would just be me. I'd just be like helping. I'll be like the blunt instrument behind just like moving rocks and stuff. That's what I can do. That's what I really like about Daylight. In like spoiler for Daylight for the first like third of it. You have the character, the Viggo Mortensen's character, who's an escape artist, who's like, this is the perfect, you're like the ideal person to be here, and he is the first one to die because he has all the skills, he has the gear, but he doesn't know how to work as a team or listen to people, so he just gets taken out. So it's not even about like having the skills and being like a good just having the required skills to be under there. You need to like work as a team as well and be a good person and not just hey, film me climb up this thing. Oh, I'm dead. Like
Yeah.
that's what I love about Daylight.
No, I'm spindly and easily injured. I'm Roddy McDowell in this.
You,
In this
you keep on
scenario.
telling me about I need to come to Colorado and climb some mountains. So I mean, maybe you have some mountain experience,
I've
or is
got I've got lungs that can maybe take thinner air than the average person, but that's maybe about it.
maybe that'll do. I don't know. We'll have to
When I
wait and
say
see, I
climbing
guess.
mountains, I'm talking about walking a trail that gradually gets higher in elevation. I'm not like, we're not talking cliffhanger here, Mr. Rennie Harlan. So
Yes, well, neither am I. I mean, we did Snowdon this past year, but it's up a trail we were with other people. We took a dog that's a foot tall, and he managed it up and down like it was just a walk in the park. So
yeah, no,
anyway,
the dogs do a much better job with it. I'll be aching for days.
I recommend going to Snowdon. It was fun. Anyway, terrible view at the top if it's cloudy, but what do you know? Mrs. Rosen dies. Manny is given 1 minute to say goodbye to this woman that he's been married to for decades, and I feel
Mhm.
like in that situation, I'd need to be like pried away, just like dragged
Yeah.
away. I don't see because I everyone else heads off, and Gene Hackman's like, "You got a minute, catch us up." There would be no catching up. I just have to, Faulkner would have to come back and drag me off. I feel like, but he like this is a film, so Jack Halverson gets up and walks off.
I'm half expecting Hackman to be there looking at his watch going
15 seconds left.
58, 59. All right, time's up.
Yeah, might have spoiled the moment just a little. Um, so there's now 8 people left, and they have this mangled wreckage of wires and catwalks and things. They're like, this will lead up somehow, somewhere. Um, and they climb up to get to the top of it, and then there's some kind of an exit. It gets blocked off by there's a wheel that needs to be turned, but there's steam coming out, blocks the wheel, and eruptions from inside. During all of this, Mrs. Rogan falls into fire and dies immediately. Yeah, it could have been anyone. She just wanted to have to be standing nearest the edge. So yeah, she's gone. And then it's the second she has passed, Mr. Rogo, Orgline, falls straight into this monologue he's had prepared since the second they started trying to escape.
Yes. You
Blaming,
killed her.
blaming Scott for taking the only thing he ever loved in this world. Uh,
And I mean, to say that Mrs. Rogo falls is almost a stretch because it's like it's almost. Are you sure she didn't jump? Because it almost looks like it.
it did feel very much like a wait, how many people are alive? Okay, let's kill her.
Yep. Let's get one more. Is eeny, meeny, miny. Okay, guess what?
You insulted Mrs. Rosen earlier. She was helpful, so now it's your turn to die. Yeah.
Stella Stevens, it's going to be you, but we'll give you an extra grand if you die. So,
And then just to cope with Ernest Borgnine's ranting and raving, the only thing Gene Hackman can do is sacrifice himself. I feel like just to get out of the situation. So he jumps onto the wheel, manages to turn it through all the hot steam, whilst ranting at God to let them live. What does he need? Kill him as well. Uh, and so then he just turns the steam off, and then he just drops down into the water,
It
and we never see him again. And
and that's the biggest crime of the film.
yeah,
Because don't you? I mean, I realize we're going to do a whole nother episode here. Going into the sequel, but shouldn't the sequel have been like Gene Hackman emerging from the flames?
I feel like
And
that should
that's
have been
where
the
it
end of
begins.
this film. Like, because we never see the body. I always remember that he falls in. I always forget that he doesn't come back.
I
Because it,
know, but
cause
it's not convincing because it's Gene Hackman. You're going, no, he's not
it's the
dead. He's
hero of
not
the
dead.
film.
That's Gene Hackman. He's not dead.
Ugh, he's been so like physical
No,
and present and getting everyone to go the whole time, and then he falls. Yes, the fire is on water. The water is on fire. The fire is on water. The water is on fire that he falls into, but only on the surface. He could eat in any other film made mid 90s onwards. He drops down, swims out, gets out, finds
yeah,
another way out. It's what happens in
right.
daylight. They find another way out.
Well,
Ah.
and the other thing about the scene too is the whole shouting at God thing, which and take me instead. And I was thinking, oh, this is 72. They do this again. I mean, that's the end of The Exorcist. You know what I mean? Like a year later.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that, but yep, you're completely right. Yeah. I don't like the whole like take me instead, like yelling at God. Like, well, what's it gonna take? I don't like blaming all of this on religion. I'm not a religious person. I'm not gonna get into that. It's just I don't like. I know that his character was in a preacher this whole time, but I'd have preferred at the end of it. He just like sod it. God's not real. I just it's just like he just he takes this all as a sign, like, to renounce his religion rather than it was God. He just needed one more sacrifice, and then it'll work.
But see, if he had done that, if he jumped onto the big red wheel and he's shouting at God, and he's going, you're not real. I denounce you and all that stuff. And then like suddenly the hull of the ship would open up and a light would shine in. Oh, and Ernest Borgnine and all the rest of them float out magically, and then the hull closes back up and is engulfed in flames.
Leaving Gene Hackman still in there.
Yeah.
I mean, that would certainly be an ending. Yeah, so he sacrifices himself. Rogo takes the lead after. Oh, yeah, he takes a moment to recover. He needs to get. So hell, so if for the logic of this film, Gene Hackman sacrificed himself. If all it took was one more sacrifice, if he'd like thrown red buttons off the catwalk, would they have got out? Was there anyone, or did it have to be him?
I mean, Gene Hackman was convincing all of them to do all this stuff throughout the movie. I think he probably could have said, "Hey, Mr. Martin, come on over here. All you got to do is jump on that wheel there and give it a couple spins. I'll grab you. I'll bring you back. I'll bring you back."
He starts throwing stones at him once he's on there,
Yeah.
hitting him with a pipe until he falls.
Naughty is mine.
So yeah, no more lead of the film. Ernest Borgnine takes over. He pulls himself together after Mr. Nothing tells him to. They make their way up to the bit where it's only an inch thick steel, which is 1 inch thinner than 2 inches, as we know. So they start hitting it with pipes. Fortunately, someone has come on to save them. Cuts them out. 6 survivors. Hooray! No one else came off the boat. And there was a big old party in there, and only 6 people got out. That's
Well,
not good odds.
and there's a part of me that thinks Ernest Borgnine, his first words out of there would have been, my wife just fell. Go see if you can find her. But the Reverend just fell. See if you can find him. I mean, these things just happened, and the rescue guys are there. That's kind of their job.
Yeah, yeah. They just take the word of these 6 people. Like, no, we're all that made it.
Yep, that's it.
That's it. They
No
didn't even
more.
try. I mean, a guy was alive, just fell into some water. But it's like, I mean, wouldn't even try. It's just no hope. It's like
I mean,
when you think
as,
about the next film, the other survivors weren't that far
there's,
away.
you're right. There's a lot more, and there's a lot more time.
Yeah. I, they do say,
Maybe put up a perimeter. Let's get to work.
because they do say there's that boat that stayed afloat for 10 hours after it was hit.
Yeah.
Um, this one's up for longer than that. Just saying, it gets hit at midnight. It's like daylight when more people arrive, and it's December. So anyway, more on that soon. Um, yeah, so that's the Poseidon Adventure. I still like it. Good film. I think
I do too.
it
It's
works
great.
as a disaster movie by having a simple premise. It's a boat upside down, and you know what's happening. You know the characters is trying to get up and get out. There's no like secondary plot. There's no madman behind the wheel kind of thing. It's all just nature taking its course on this boat. Get out, and you've got good
Yep.
characters, great actors doing the job.
Right.
That's
Fun premise,
yeah.
fun characters, good performances. Yeah.
That's what we need simplicity in these kind of things, and it works. On that later. So the Poseidon Adventure, great film. How is it like Deep Blue Sea? Well, I have a list.
I'm ready.
There's a preacher in it.
Yes, I was gonna say. I think as soon as right at the beginning when you said Gene Hackman's a preacher, I was like, oh, well, that's the marriage right there. It's
No, it does not have
preacher.
a bird, but is a preacher. There is a discussion of wave height. There is a singing cast member. The Shelby boy has Kid Scoggins energy for me. He has all the information. Not a compliment. But he has all the information about where they are. And that's just Scoggins thing. It's an old facility that's not holding up very well. There's a party scene. There's radar use. There's an incoming storm at sea. There's a kitchen scene. There's a flooded facility that they're trying to make their way up. They're wading through corridors, climbing up a ladder in an elevator shaft. Someone falls off the ladder and dies. They find a dead body underwater at one point. That's in the I can't remember, dead body underwater. Lots of shots of Mrs. Rogo in her underwear. That is the case with Saffron Burrows. Pipe spewing hot steam. The preacher talks to God. There's a high sacrificial jump into water. And wheel turning to get out. Lots of wheel turning in Deep Blue Sea. Lots of doors. These aren't all the most obvious stuff. I feel like Preacher...
Practically a remake.
It's practically a remake. I mean, I was on Emily Slade's podcast, Why This Film, to talk about Daylight again. And when I watched that, there's so many similarities between Daylight and Poseidon Adventure. That would be a much longer list, I feel like. But we have one other thing to do, which is how deep and how blue is the Poseidon Adventure. So, Todd, as I'm sure you know, Deep Blue Sea is about 47.5 feet deep, 31% blue. Do you reckon the Poseidon Adventure is deeper and or bluer than that?
I don't think so. Because I mean, yes, they have to climb a lot of levels, but I don't think they get quite that deep. It doesn't seem. So I don't think it's as deep. I don't know how big these cruise ships are. It's not like today's. Today's are huge. I mean, it's still pretty big, but I don't know.
I had to do some guesswork a little bit. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, I looked up what the height of a ship deck is, because they talked about at one point they have to go through 8 decks of depth.
Right.
And so I found out that a ship deck is about 9'6", which allows for a couple of feet of like wiring and vents and stuff between them, which is about 3 meters. But then the ballroom would have been about 16 foot, so about 5 meters. And then it does actually, I was kind of working out deck wise where they're going from one place to another, and it all kind of works out nicely. This is a nice, easy film to do depth wise. It came out to being about 17.3 feet deep on average. Because they do spend quite a lot of time, all that time they spend before they get flipped, they're quite high up, after them being quite low down afterwards.
Right.
So it kind of balances out, and then, yeah. Blueness, about 13% blue. Not terribly blue, but also not awful. We've had bluer, we've had less blue.
It's not a terribly colorful movie to start with.
It's
I mean,
not.
they're
Yeah.
lurking around in the dark and under the water and things like that. So yeah, doesn't get very blue.
Yeah. So this is our. This is our. Oh, it's almost exactly as deep as Deep Rising. So it's slightly less deep. It's between Piranha 3D and Deep Rising. So it is uh, it's our 13th deepest film. Blueness. It is just above Shark Night 3D and just below Santa Jaws, another holiday film. So it's our 33rd bluest film. So everyone wants to know that, I'm sure. Good. Well, that's been our discussion of the Poseidon Adventure. Todd is going to come back very, very soon for the next episode because we're going to talk about.
Say what?
We have to talk about Beyond the Poseidon Adventure because
Yes.
it's not only is it a sequel to Poseidon Adventure, it's a terrible Michael Caine sequel, and that's what Todd does on this show. So, so Todd will be back on the next episode. But before then, what have you got to plug, Todd?
Well, my blog is called Forgotten Films. That's at forgottenfilmcast.wordpress.com. And I have a podcast, which is called The Forgotten Filmcast. So that's where we talk about what I always call the movies that time forgot, things that are a bit off the radar. You don't get a lot of press these days. We cover films from all sorts of different eras. There's a recent episode on there with Jay, where we talk about a prison escape movie, or not prison escape movie, a prison riot movie that's called Riot in Cell Block 11. So yeah, be sure to check that out.
Yeah, it's a fun film featuring a cast member from Con Air. So it's always a good time. Excellent. Well, you can find me and Mark talking about the aforementioned Con Air over on Con Air the podcast. We're going through scene by scene. And Todd recently did a wonderful job guest hosting Lampardy, so that I could take part over on the Lambcast. That's movie trivia based on Jeopardy. We did a tournament for 2022. I made it to the final in that tournament, so you should go and listen to that final now, because it was an excellent, excellent show over on the Lambcast. But I mean, Todd's going to come back next week. I will also be here. I say next week, it'll probably be 2 weeks. But like immediately after this for us, so time. So as for the Poseidon Adventure, thank you to my guest Todd Lieberman.
Thank you.
I've been Jake Lure, and we'll Deep Blue see you again soon.